All right, so today I want to talk about, in my opinion, what one of the main drivers, or if not the main driver of disease and illness, at least in the modern world, Western culture. Um, why is it that in 2025, here in America, we see chronic illness and disease on a rise? Now, of course, there's lots of things that get attributed to this. One is obviously obesity, diabetes. Those things all get lumped together, though, kind of metabolic illness, and why the life expectancy has gone down. But I would still argue that those are downstream of the overarching issue. Other people say, well, microplastics and processed foods and all this. And all of this goes into what we call metabolic chaos. But I still believe that there is one overarching thing that all of this lives downstream of, and that is simply, not the best pin here, stress. And I know a lot of people probably are rolling their eyes like, oh, here we go, hearing about stress. But specifically, chronic stress, chronic low-grade stress. And when I'm talking about stress, we got to define the term here a little bit, because when we think stress, we only think of stress as in that, like when somebody cuts you off in traffic, you scream bloody murder and you have road rage. Now, to be sure, that is stress, but there's so much more to just that being stress. That's what we call, psychological stress. And the thing with that is a lot of people don't think they're stressed because they've either been living their life in a stress state for so long they can't actually interpret that they're stressed, or two, they've gone through this rationalization process. They have some decent coping mechanisms, and we're going to get into it, your nervous system doesn't give a shit what you think psychologically. You might tell yourself a good story, but your nervous system is still wound up, your hormonal system is still secreting cortisol, and so you can tell yourself all the good stories you want, you can Goggins yourself all that, but that is not health. That is the absence of health, and that is slowly leading to your death and demise. So there's other things than just psychological stress. One of the big ones is financial stress. We have toxic stress because we live in a toxic soup in our modern environment. Yes, if you are carrying around excessive body weight, that is a stressor on the body. If you're eating toxic foods, that's a stressor on the body. If you are not able to detox well, that's a stressor on the body. If you have relational stress, that's a stressor on the body. If you're not happy with your life, that's a stress. If you have past events in your life that are traumas that you have not resolved, that is a stressor. All of these things are stressors. Now, some people will argue, right, that there's kind of two types of stress. So we'd have an offshoot here. We'd have distress, which is kind of what we're talking about right now. But then people will say, yeah, but Sean, there's good stress. There's eustress, right? So distress and eustress. Now, distress is what I was just talking about. It's all the negative, quote unquote, stressors. And eustress would be this thing that is like this good stress. So, going skydiving could be a eustress. It's a stressor. Your body's in a fight or flight state. The thing that makes something a eustress, though, is that psychologically, you are able to ingrain that memory of that event as a positive thing. And so the thing that makes eustress a little bit different is that physiologically, you have the same exact reaction to, some stressor that is good in your life as you do a de-stress. It's the same hormone cascade. It's the same nervous system activation. It's the after effect of how you interpret this event versus this event. Meaning in the future, when you rethink of that memory, you won't be thrown back into a fight or flight state. You'll be, just more happy, everything like that. Whereas a distress, if it's a truly that kind of traumatic event or a stressful event, you can get thrown back in, and it can be as if it's happening in the present moment. You have elevated heart rate, sweating, all the things, even though you're in your kitchen, right? That's that classic kind of PTSD. It's an extreme example, but to be sure, there is distress and eustress. This is true. However, I argue that even with eustress, well, you don't want to avoid this. This is good for you. You still have the same physiological releases and reactions in the moment. So then, what does that look like, right? So again, we're talking stress. Why is this something that's so pervasive? We have a couple different systems that are activated and that are affecting the body when we have stress. So now we'll kind of, boom, go down here. We'll start off with the nervous system. Nervous system. So with the nervous system, right, we have a stressor, whatever it is. You get a bill you didn't think you were going to have to pay or that you weren't expecting. Boom. Immediately, there is this fight or flight response. There is this cascade. So what's happening here is, I don't want to use red again because this red pen is just trash. See if I can get it to work. We'll have, come over on this side, sympathetic. I'll just go simp. Not that we are simp. I'm using blue, guys. I'm using blue. That red sucks. And we have parasympathetic. Your boy can't spell. So sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic, fight or flight. Come back on this side. Parasympathetic, rest and digest. Right? So these are the yin and yang of the nervous system. So when we have a stressor, we will be kind of thrown into this sympathetic nervous system state. Well, now we'll talk about that. How does this actually work? How does the body communicate? We're in a sympathetic state. How does it react? Hormone system. The main hormone of the sympathetic nervous system is what we call cortisol. Cortisol. Okay? HPA axis is in control of this. Cortisol is released. Cortisol is a messenger hormone, essentially messaging to the adrenals and then to the rest of the body. Hey, adrenals, release adrenaline. Hey, rest of body, prioritize everything towards whatever this stressor is. We need to survive this, Evolutionarily speaking, that is fighting a bear, trying to get food, whatever it is. In our modern day, it's yell at your spouse. It's make sure that person who cut you off in traffic really gets a piece of your mind. That's cortisol, and that's what kind of controls the sympathetic activation. In a perfect world, what we would see, and I'm going to draw this on the other side, is essentially stressor happens, cortisol is released, we have this heightened state. Once the stressor is gone, we've taken care of it, we come back down to a homeostatic place. My argument here is that this whole system is fucked in the modern era. That's not happening, that up and come back down. Instead, we go up and we stay there, or if we do come down, we come down a little bit, but we don't come back down to homeostasis. What would homeostasis look like? That would look like coming back into parasympathetic as our base level, just kind of everyday living. That would be our normal state. And this would be kind of more controlled by what we call DHEA hormone, kind of the parent anabolic hormone, right? So whereas cortisol tells the body stop, cellular regeneration, muscle protein synthesis, all these things stop. Anything where energy is not being put to my external world, stop it. DHEA signals back to the body, hey, we're good, baby. Let's digest that food. Let's break down the protein into our amino acids. Let's make some enzymes. Let's do some cellular regeneration. Hey, let's do some growth if we're, in our teenage years. All of that, right? And so, again, there always needs to be interplay between these two. A healthy body is one that can go back and forth, back and forth. But again, my argument is that most of us are living in a low-grade sympathetic fight or flight state. My argument for why is that most of us live in the rat race. The modern era, we are so addicted to trying to make more money, and out of necessity to a point, like, we got to survive. But so many of us want more and more and more, and it's because that's what we're fed. Society puts achievement, monetary success on a pedestal, and we're all trying to get more, keep up with the Joneses. More power, more clout, more recognition. We're just addicted to this more and more and more. And the people I meet who are sometimes the unhealthiest are the highest achievers. They've got the money, they've got the businesses, they've got the relationships, whatever, but you look at them and they're either overweight, they have bags under their eyes, they're depressed, they hate themselves, their relationships are failing, but what we would say as a society, they're super succeeding. Well, they've been stuck on this chronic sympathetic fight or flight state for years, decades. How do I know? This was me. Since I was a teenager, everything for my life has been go, achieve, do more. Football, scholarships, college, trying to be a high-level CrossFit athlete while being a high-level coach, owning a CrossFit gym. It's just been more and more and more, and I've been running towards it. And all the while, I can't sit with myself. I can't calm down. I always have to do more and more and more. And come to find out, this whole system was messed up and everything downstream of it was, right? And this makes sense. If cortisol is telling the body, stop doing what you're doing, no regeneration, no rebuilding, we have to address the bear in front of us. Well, imagine you're in that chronic state for a decade, 2 decades. That's a decade or two where more often than not, you're not doing any cellular regeneration, you're not doing any detoxification, your metabolism is going to get shot. A lot of people that have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, etc., this is where it comes from, right? You can't make proper hormones. And so most of the stuff I see with health issues, chronic illness issues, comes downstream of this. Even gut issues, right? A lot of the reason people have gut issues is they have an impaired mucosal barrier. How does that happen? Chronic stress. The body can't repair. The mucosal barrier can't repair. Little critters get in. The immune system can't fight them off properly because it doesn't have enough energy. It doesn't have enough calories, right? All of this is downstream of stress, right? So what would we like to see? I'm going to turn this around really quick. Now this is straight from FDN teachings. Okay, so what we'd want to see, I'm just going to make sure this is in the camera really quick. Yeah, cool. So what we'd want to see, right, and I'm not going to use the actual numbers necessarily, I'm just going to make a graph here. God, these pens, guys, they're brand new, you'd think. Okay, so on this side, which one's the x-axis, the y-axis? So this is cortisol. Cortisol, look at that, boom, okay? Real quick, I'm gonna get a red pen, or a green pen. I'm coming back, I promise. Okay, green pen. So let's say we have a stressor, right? What we'd want to see, let's say like this is our baseline right here. Stressor happens right here. We'd want to see it go up, right? Come back down and level back out, right? So this is the peak of our stress, right? Let's just say stressor. Stressor happens. Boom, we respond to the stressor. Stressor is relieved of stress. It's gone, whatever. And then we'd come back down into homeostasis, and this would be our parasympathetic state. Unfortunately, what we see a lot of time is actually something like this. We have a stressor, right? Okay, baseline. We have a stressor, and it stays up here like this, and it slowly comes down, and now we go below baseline, and this is what we would call the exhaustive state. So what we would call this is the acute state, right? You have an acute response. Technically, this needs to actually come back down to a baseline level, so that's going to be called compensatory, which we'll go over here in a sec. Boom, and then back down even more. Right, so this whole phase right here, kind of the acute phase. We have an acute stressor, we react to it. On the downslope here, this is what we would call compensatory. Your body's trying to compensate, but here's what happens. This acute could last years. It could last decades, right? We have chronic stress, chronic stress, chronic stress. So this can apply to a short-term stressor, but this applies to our lifelong stress as well. What happens is most people are up here for years. They never actually come back down to a homeostatic level. Everybody's tolerance to that is, it's up to you in your genetics, and again, how well you psychologically kind of trick yourself into thinking don't live a stressful life. Everybody though, if you don't have good coping mechanisms to come back down, will eventually slide down this way. Your body's gonna start compensating. How's it gonna compensate? It's gonna try to produce a lot more DHEA, right? It's gonna try to really turn off the rest of the systems to try to make sure we can get that cortisol down. It's not gonna be able to happen. You're gonna be here, and then you're gonna keep falling down. I'm gonna redo this. I'm not great with graphs. It's just gonna keep coming down, right? And now, what would end up happening is if we don't pull this back, if we don't intervene, if we don't learn how to pull these stressors out of the body, out of the mind, out of the spirit, we get down here to exhaustive, which is where your boy was at. What is this? Well, pretty much how it sounds, exhaustive. The body, the hormone system, most of the other systems are in a completely exhaustive state. They can't do anything. What we'd actually see here is instead of really high cortisol, it's actually really low cortisol. The body's just like, we can't do it anymore. HPA access, we can't do it anymore. We've tried to compensate for so long, we can't do it anymore. This, the longer we're in this exhaustive state, that is disease. This is where, when people show up with autoimmune diseases, even more intense diseases like cancers, etc., they are here. Every single time, they are here when it comes to their cortisol, their stress hormone, their stress pathway. Everything is downstream of this, right? Now, is obesity necessarily downstream of this? No, not necessarily, but obesity would add into this, right? Diabetes, etc. So it's part and parcel. It's not like, oh, I'm just stressed. That is why I'm obese or diabetic or whatever. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying, though, is when it comes to finally getting the chronic illness or the disease or something like that, is that the overarching thing going on here is that cortisol is high. And there's a lot of things that play into that. But under the umbrella of stress, right, to go back to it, cortisol elevation for elongated periods of time. And so this is why, if you're watching this and you are a high achiever, or if you're somebody that has to work all day long and has kids, I get it. We're trying to all survive and everything like that. No matter what boat you're in, whether you're the person who's trying to survive or you're the person who's always trying to make more money or do more or be seen more or make more content, you gotta start learning how to have recharge in your day, and again, some people might roll their eyes and think this doesn't make a huge impact. It does. I mean, studies have shown this, that there's a reason meditation works. But just taking time for silence in the middle of the day, I want you to think about your day, right? If you don't have a practice right now, think about from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, how often are you getting input from outside of you? From podcasts, from the radio, from the news, from your spouse, from kids. Like, think about how much time is spent during the day with just input. And think about how much time is spent during the day with nothing coming in. You are just there in complete silence with your thoughts. For most of us, it's almost none or very little. That is incredibly stressful. When you are able to sit in silence, do breath work, meditate, whatever it is, cortisol comes down. You are pulling yourself out of that sympathetic state into the parasympathetic state. And at first, your body does not want to do that. But over time, the more you do it, the more you throw, and it could be 5 minutes, do a 5-minute meditation, 5-minute walk in silence. It doesn't have to be this big thing, but the more you do it, the more you recharge that battery, the more you're teaching the nervous system, hey, we don't have to be in this low grade fight or flight. We don't have to be vigilant. We don't always have to be on. Even 5 minutes, you're giving your body 5 minutes to try to recharge, rebuild, regrow, synthesize, all those things we just talked about. Over time, that builds up. And guess what? You end up becoming a better version of you. This is the thing. So many people, especially high achievers, you think the moment you let your foot off the pedal, right, you take a little break, you take some breath, oh my God, I'm being lazy, right? And this is me talking to myself. This was one of my biggest issues. You end up being way better at what you do. When I started doing this, when I've gone through my healing phase and I feel incredible now, I'm able to take on so much more work and not feel overwhelmed and not feel resentful or anything like that, because I'm so much easier to bounce back and forth. My limbic system, my lizard brain, my amygdala isn't just activated and on. I'm able to actually do more with less stress. When you're stuck here, you think you're doing a whole bunch, you're doing most of it half-assed, and any little thing sets you off. Any little thing. That's another thing. You know you're here if things that used to just roll off your shoulders do not anymore. Or if something that's really not that big of a deal sets you over the edge. That whole, like, you have anger issues. You are here, my friend. You are here. And most of us are here. And if you are here for years and years and decades plus, you will end up with a disease of some kind. I will guarantee it. Chronic illness or disease will creep in because you've lived a life of just going, gone. So, if your identity is stuck in what you do and how much you achieve and all those kinds of things, you're doing yourself a detriment. You need to learn how to pull yourself out of that, get into that rest and digest state, and then end up being a better version of yourself. Be a better parent, be a better spouse, be a better worker, right? Be a better CEO, be a better entrepreneur with these kinds of things. And so, stress, Stellar Health Awakening is one of the first things we will look at based off of your nervous system, based off of your cortisol to DHE ratios. And in my opinion, and what we believe here at Stellar Health Awakening, chronic illness, disease, any breakdown in the other systems we've talked about comes from this chronic stress ball, which a lot of us are in the modern era. All right? If you go to any blue zones across the world, what's the one thing they have in common? They don't live this life of high stress. They have siestas in the middle of the day. They're not addicted to how much work they're doing. They're not trying to make the most amount of money. They have great family lives. They live next to the coast. They take time off. That's actually the underlying thing that makes all the blue zones common. They all have different diets, workout routines. Some of them smoke. One thing here is that they all have a great handle on stress. They ain't worried about life like we are in the United States and Western culture. So I hope that gives you a little bit better understanding of stress, why that's one of the leading causes of chronic illness and disease in the modern world. And hopefully you can think about that. If you are interested in having deeper practices, supplementation protocols, coaching around this, reach out to me. Let me know. Again, I'll be taking on one-on-one coaching here very soon over the summer. I have a wait list right now. I have a handful of people on it based off of what I see from who fills that out. I will reach out to the people I think will be a good match and a good fit. And again, like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us Stellar Health Awakening podcast, follow the Substack. You know, if you're watching the YouTube video, please subscribe and all that stuff. All right, guys.